Most people do not spend near the amount of time on their interior world as they do their exterior world. We're going to be in Matthew chapter 23. I'm just wondering if does anybody know if my PowerPoint got loaded? No? Okay, it didn't. So that was one thing we're going to have today. We'll move that on to some future week. So let me ask this question, and I bet some of you know this. How does the inside of your house look right now? And the reason why I'm asking is you've probably seen a lot more of the inside of your house in the last 2 weeks than you have in the previous 3, 4, 5 months. Are you happy with everything? How many of you have looked and said, I really need to change the color of this room? How many of you noticed something in the kitchen you'd like to change? You noticed something in your wall that you didn't notice before? Something that's, I don't know, some little gash in the wall? We've gotten well too acquainted with all our insides. Now, I know I'm looking at about 8 people here or so. Can I tell you how happy I am to look at 8 people? This is not something I'm even used to. It's interesting how much things change in a short period of time. Jesus has some very important things to say. Very good. I think we've got our PowerPoint now. Has some very important things to say about our insides in Matthew chapter 23. Starting in verse 23, reading down through verse 31. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give 1/10 of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former. You blind guides! You strain at a gnat, but swallow a camel. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup, then the outside will also be clean. And woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you're full of hypocrisy and wickedness. And woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You build tombs for the prophets and decorate the graves of the righteous, and you say, if we lived in the days of our ancestors, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. So you testify against yourselves that you are the descendants of those who murdered the prophets. And we wonder why they wanted to kill Jesus after a verse like this. Very strong language. Jesus is looking at his world and rightly looking at some people and condemning them first for hiding behind religious practice. See, in their world, the thought was, boy, I'm a religious Jew. I'm in good standing. I do everything I'm supposed to do. I avoid lobster and crab. I don't eat bacon cheeseburgers. I don't get the pulled pork at Famous Dave's. I'm fine. I keep every external command. I know all the rules. I value the rules. I treasure the rules. Even some of us, and there are those of us here who have to follow every rule. When you were 6, you were really, really concentrating on being sure that you never went outside the line in your coloring book. If you did, it broke your heart. And there are others of us here, you didn't care where the lines were in your coloring book. There are those here that loved every rule they had, and the Jews at this time had a lengthy list. See, the idea was, if I did everything right, if I eat all the right stuff, if I wear clothes made of the right fabric, yes, that was one of the rules. And it couldn't be 2 different fabrics. You couldn't have some poly blend. Didn't even exist, but you had to have everything made of one fabric. if I do everything correct, then God will bless me. If I do, or even we do all these things right, then we get to keep this land, and we won't get kicked out again. If I do this, then God will do that. It's all very transactional. That thinking is always tempting. It is in every generation. We think that if we do all the right things, we think that if we do things just so, then God will bless us. If I go to church 3 times per month, if I only go twice, then I'm slipping, but 4 gets a little heavy. But if I go 3 times a month, if I post a prayer on Facebook at least once per month, if I pray at least once per day and post a nice Jesus meme on my Facebook, then He'll bless me. Maybe a bumper sticker on my car. Then God will answer my prayer, and I will be a good person. I don't understand what's wrong with any of these things. What's wrong with going to church 3 times per month? What's wrong with praying once per day? The answer is nothing. These are all good. There was also nothing wrong with all the things the Jewish leaders were doing that Jesus was talking about. The critique that Jesus had for these leaders was not what they were doing, but that their interior, their insides did not reflect the effort that they were making on the outside. Their insides did not reflect God. Life gets tough when our interior world does not match our exterior world. And that's a fight we all have to face. That's a fight we all struggle with, having our insides match the outsides. Truth be told, we get used to living behind a fake exterior, a fake veneer. We live in a world that thinks quite a lot about our exteriors. Here we are at the end of March. This week, I took some of the extra time before it rained. I did something very important. I applied my first fertilizer treatment on my yard for the year. See, last year I did the same thing, except what I did was I used what I had left over from the year before, and it didn't have the crabgrass killer in it, and then July came, and I paid the penalty. So this year I had to be sure I got the crabgrass treatment, and I did that this week. Now, if it didn't all wash away last night, maybe it'll be good. The reason why is I want the outside, I want the exterior of my home to look good. My wife will tell you I'm a little obsessive about no dandelions in my yard. Some of you are the same way. I cannot deal with a dandelion. And when I see one, I have a tool to get rid of it. Also, at the end of last October, we went outside and we trimmed all our bushes. We trimmed all the shrubs. Because we want the outside of the house to look pretty good. Here in a week or 2, maybe 3, depending on the weather, and if we're ever able to do this again, go to the store and buy flowers. I'm sure my wife will do that, and we'll plant flowers between the shrubs. And I'd like to tell you that my wife will just willy-nilly plant the flowers, but no, she'll have a ruler out there and be sure they're all just exactly the same distance apart and in between the shrubs, because we want the outside to look good and want to be sure everything's just so. Even inside, we want some of the exteriors to look great. Does the paint match the carpeting? Does the backsplash highlight the overall theme of the kitchen? Do I even know what a backsplash is? Sometimes our wives will be sure the hand towels in the bathroom, does it match the curtain, the shower curtain, and the carpet, and the paint? Does it all tie together? And I go in and say, which towel am I allowed to use to dry my hands? That's my only concern. All of us, we spend a lot of time trying to dress in a certain way that highlights or augments ourselves physically. I don't know what any of this means. I think you can go to some kind of dressing coordinator and they have a thing called a color wheel. And they'll tell you if you're a winter or an autumn or a summer or a spring. I have no idea what any of that means. But I guess it means there's certain colors you're supposed to dress in that's supposed to look good on you. And they do all this stuff to try to be sure you're dressing in the right color so you don't look washed out or don't look... I don't understand any of that. We go to great lengths with our exteriors. And there are many who do all these things very, very well. And their towels match the shower curtain. Their flowers are exactly the right length from all the shrubs. Their house and the shutters go perfectly together. And there's no dandelions in their yard. And their lives are still a mess. And some might say that doesn't look like it from the outside. Why? And I bet in most circumstances, the reason why lives are a mess when everything looks great from the outside is because the interior world does not match the exterior. You go inside their house and it's full of tension, and it's full of anger, it's full of bitterness, distrust, jealousy, and envy. The individual person who's dressed just perfectly, all the colors match, everything's fine, they've got their color wheel, they know what color they're supposed to have, they have everything just so on the outside. But we get to our insides, and our insides don't match at all what's going on with our exterior world. Most people do not spend near the amount of time on their interior world as they do their exterior world. And I think in some ways, in these last couple weeks, we all have gotten a little picture of our interior world. And the interior world is hard. Some of the things we normally spend time with, we're not able to do. And so some of us, like me, if there's want to turn the television on, I'm hoping now, this week was when baseball games were starting to populate the screen, and that's not there. And so now we're with things oddly quiet and our schedule oddly available. Some of us have come face to face in the last 2 weeks with that still small voice that we hear from time to time. And the trouble with that quiet voice that speaks to us is that quiet voice is often mean because it questions us. It pulls us up. It checks us from some of the things we're doing. It's trying to lead us into different places. Our interior world forces us to face the uncomfortable. The interior is where all the difficult changes need to be made. Sometimes we live in a house for a while and maybe the house gets to be old, and after a big rain like we had the other night, we'll go to a basement or we'll go to some part of maybe an upstairs room, and we'll notice some water's gotten in. We see a little wet spot on the ceiling, or we'll see a little trickle of water in the basement. And so our first response is, oh great. And we'll go up to the roof, we'll go down, and we'll try to, put some epoxy or stick some caulk in it. Or the guy on the TV, will spray that rubber thing on there and say, yeah, that'll take care of it. And we'll do some quick exterior fix that'll make it all better, except at best it just delays it for a while. The next rain, the next 2 rains, and then here comes the water again. Because if we're going to stop water in the basement, we can't just apply some exterior fix. We got to do some interior work to get it done. Our interior is where all the difficult changes in life have to happen. Our interior world has to be fixed because that's ultimately the driver to our exterior. But it's a lot easier to just make a little outward fix. Our interior world is where we dramatically encounter the Holy Spirit in our lives. The problem is in all our lives, there's kind of a drag of hypocrisy. And the thing is, when our insides finally match our outsides, we become far more effective. When our insides match the outsides, there's a lot less to remember. Mismatched worlds, when our interior world and our exterior world don't match, it drags us down. And it does for a lot of reasons. First of all, when we have a facade we have to keep up, we have to remember exactly what facade we're trying to facilitate. And that gets to be a lot to remember after a while. If we're deeply unhappy with our interior world and we set up this outside world, it's tough to keep track of all the different parts of that world. The other thing is, like the basement, like the foundation, like the roof that starts to leak, there are always cracks. And someone will always notice the difference between what we try to present and the reality of our interior world. And here's why we don't like our kids. Because when there's a crack in our exterior world and the interior shines through, the first people to notice are the kids. And they have no problem speaking up about that fault line. They speak up about the differences that they see. And when we're reminded about the interior world not matching up, we tend to get a little on edge about it. I don't like it. None of us like it. Imagine living in a life where the reality of our interior world just naturally bubbles to the surface. There is influence when our inside matches our outside. There's freedom when our inside matches our outside. There's effectiveness when our inside matches our outside. I'm not saying that when we all encounter God's Spirit, that we all become similar. There are nice, sweet people that live without Christ and nice, sweet people with Christ. There are curmudgeons that aren't Christian, and there are Christian curmudgeons. Most people, I think, in our world that we meet, pretend to be nice. Many people say they love you, but don't care at all once you're gone. What if instead you just expressed a love that just was springing up from a genuine source? What if our desire was not to maintain a facade, but what if our desire was just to be holy and to please God? What if our desire was to just be real or just acting a certain way when grandma's around? What could you accomplish if your inside matched your outside? How effective could you be if your interior world matched your exterior world? So the question I asked at the beginning, how do you like your inside? A timely one because we've been stuck there now for a while and it looks like we got maybe another week or two at least. It's a timely question. I bet some of you have found some part of your interior home that you would like to change. I'm betting on two things that'll happen from this. First thing is this. I'm just guessing that after 3-4 weeks inside our house, that once we're all released and things return to normal, there'll be a wave of interior decorating that happens in all our houses. There'll be new kitchens, new living rooms, new furniture. We'll have a wave of this because we'll want some kind of change. I actually believe this. The second thing is, after all of this home and all of this togetherness, and there's no games to watch and all of this thing, I'm betting in a huge baby boom come December, January 2020 and January 2021. I think we'll have a wave of births. I'm just predicting both those. You've noticed the need for a new color, a new couch, a new carpet, new curtains, because you've had all this time in your interior world of your home. You've noticed because of the time you've spent there. My sincere hope is that you have found the inside of your home to be a comfortable place to be in these last few weeks. Maybe also this is a good time to look at our insides, our interior world. Are you comfortable with what you see there? Would Christ be pleased with your inner world, or would he suggest a change? See, Christ does not invite us to a world of just outward observance. Here in Matthew 23, that's what he's fighting against. Christ calls us to a wholehearted life where the inside not only matches the exterior, but leads the exterior and is the source for the exterior. This is a passage that reminds us that everything valuable in life begins in the interior world. If your interior is failing, the exterior will always fall. That's true with your house. That's true with your car. That's true with your marriage. It's just true with life. Christ calls us to change our interior first.